Hello people, Nico here. Today I want to talk about a very serious issue, and that's the psychiatric and mental health problems that men and boys face in general. Over the past few months, many articles have been written about the suicide epidemic that's attacking men in general. Men are affected a lot, worse than women are. And the reason as to why that is very simple. Men are being underdiagnosed with mental health problems, they're being undertreated with mental health problems, and when they are diagnosed and treated, they have a lot less social support than women do when it comes to problems like this. Men are also a lot more violent in their behaviors, so when it comes to suicide attempts, men are a lot more likely to succeed than women are in their suicide attempts. And men are a lot less likely to do a suicide attempt for quote-unquote attention-seeking behaviors. So where is the problem when it comes to these things? If this is well known and this is well documented that suicides are killing men, and especially young men, they're the biggest killer of young men in the UK at the moment, then why isn't this problem being addressed a lot better than it actually is? In the previous video, Man, the Being Made of Stone, I spoke about a common misconception between men, that men are unbreakable, that they are stoic, that they should never complain, and that they should always try and commit to this burden of performance that they have. But like I said, men, unlike robots, are not machines. And they do suffer with mental health problems, and mental health problems that can come as a direct effect of either their work, occupation, their social life, or perhaps their family life. And men are being attacked on a social scale at the moment. Therefore, men will suffer with a lot more problems. But there is one specific issue that we need to remember. Men will never seek help. And I say never here just to overemphasize how big the problem is. As a doctor, you commonly see men who have this kind of problems, either at the GP setting, for example, or anywhere earlier on, such as the accident emergency setting. And these men will complain of somatic problems when they are indeed actually being affected with a psychiatric problem. You see, men will commonly address their issues and self-medicate. For example, you might see a person who's been suffering with depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, or social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, whatever it might be, right? You will see these people present with other problems, with secondary problems to their main problem. These people will become alcoholics. These people can become addicts of, let's say, cocaine and other substances, and they can destroy their internal organs in their attempt to self-medicate and treat themselves, to push themselves out of the misery that their lives have become. And that is a problem that's never addressed. For example, in the accident emergency setting, when people show up with problems like that, such as alcoholism or something like that, the problem is being addressed, as in the physical problem is being addressed, but no one addresses the psychiatric problem, and they expect the GPs to be doing something similar. When the problem initially starts at the GP setting, let's say after a divorce or whatever else it might be that might cause the problem for the man, these men would show up and they would complain again of somatic problems. They might say that they have trouble sleeping. They might say that their bowels have been playing up. They might say that they're having aches and pains when they would normally not have aches and pains. And while the somatic problem might actually be addressed or attempt to be addressed, these people will not show up, and the medical professional will lose any opportunity to actually address the real problem, because men will not show up. Again, you see, the problem with addressing this kind of problems when it comes to men is that either men will not show up at all to report any psychiatric problems or any problems, or they will show up and report other problems altogether, being all ashamed about their inner emotional world, who might be in turmoil. Therefore, as medical health professionals, we need to be a lot more sensitive in diagnosing men with mental health problems and in providing men with the kind of help that they might need, especially when the problem is still early on. Now, if you look at the suicide statistics, you would see that 75% of the people who kill themselves are actually not diagnosed with any mental health problem. That means that 75% of people either never presented to the doctor to report any problem, or presented to the doctor and never got diagnosed with a mental health problem. Which means that there is a general problem within society as a whole. Men are not being seen, especially young professionals, young men who seem to be doing everything right in their lives, are not being seen as people who can potentially suffer with a mental health problem, especially a mental health problem that might be so serious that might lead them to suicide. And this problem starts with our preconceptions, I believe, about how men should be and what masculinity should be. On a society level as a whole, being a man is being demonized. Having emotions as a man, emotions that might be linked to weakness or anything like that, is something that's being demonized in general. And these men have problems expressing themselves, being men as they want to be men, and then when they land themselves in problems or when they're suffering with a mental health problem, they have a problem again expressing themselves in general. So if you cannot express yourself as a man when you want to be a man, for example, if you cannot express your feelings of masculinity, your feelings of dominance, being a lad, having a laugh and making sexist or whatever jokes, in your workplace, and you always feel like you need to put yourself under a filter. And then when it comes to you having your internal turmoil, then again, you don't want to express yourself because you're seeing yourself as a woman, then we have a problem, because these men will not present and they will not help themselves. Now, the solution is very simple. We can create tests or questionnaires that are being used by doctors which are gender specific and they pick up on this problem. But again, that will not solve the problem about men who don't show up at the doctor and they don't report their mental health problems and they don't report problems that have to do with their emotional world. So how does that get fixed? That gets fixed with addressing these issues and with videos such as the one that I made, Man the Being Made of Stone, with addressing the issues about being a man in general and being a man in the modern world. And one of the main problems that I believe we have nowadays in being men in general is that we have our feelings filtered left and right. And the only place that we have in order to express ourselves is going inwards. And when everything around us is judging us, then we turn inwards towards ourselves and we're hating ourselves and we're hating the very fact that we're men. And the only way to remove that hate is to address the problems on our own terms. Unfortunately, the problem does start when it's too late for us to be able to start this process. When you're suffering with a condition such as depression or any other mental health disorder, when it goes undiagnosed and untreated for a long period of time, then you do need some help and you do need some professional help in order to address your underlying issues. And I do urge men who listen to this message to go and see their doctors, to go and see people or speak to people who might be perfectly qualified in addressing these problems, and to not get upset when the system does not give them back what they need to get, because they need to understand that generally men are being undertreated in general, but you might be lucky enough, you might happen to stumble across individuals who might be able to understand you. And especially with the epidemic as it runs now, and I'm talking specifically about the suicide epidemic, you might come across people who are willing to help you, and especially healthcare professionals who might be aware that this is an issue and that men do need a bit more attention and a bit more help than we're actually giving them. There are many aspects to mental health and men and boys in general, and how their mental health is being addressed by the psychiatric sector and the healthcare sector in general. And those issues, I think, they're better discussed in a conversation rather than having a video which just simply lists all the problems that men are suffering nowadays. All I want is to say is that the video right now, this video in specific, is there to simply list that the main problem with suicides in men at the minute as it stands is that these men do not present to the doctor, and that the doctors do not recognize that these men are in distress. So if you happen to be one of these men, if you happen to suffer with a mental health problem, I do urge you to speak up, even when the doctor is not specifically asking you about your mental health in general. If you feel like there are problems, report them, talk to the doctor, and expect that you will get the help that you do need. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much for listening.